Churches are supposed to be one of the holiest places, but they're also one of the most haunted. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. I'm your host Emily, and today we're counting down our list of the top 10 disturbing things people have seen in haunted churches. Coming in at number 10 is the pastor's son. This Reddit user said, "My dad was a pastor at a church for 4 years. Many people had died in this church before we got there, and my parents always went away and I decided to stay home. I went over to the church to grab some snacks from the back of the old sanctuary. I went in the back of it where the snack booth was, and mind you, this was the middle of the day, so it was completely lit up through the old stained glass windows. I bent down to grab some drinks from the mini fridge under the counter, and when I got back up and turned to walk out the door, I saw this figure standing in the doorway. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, no ears. Just a bald head wearing a long dark robe. As soon as I saw it, it vanished like that. Safe to say, I ran out of there as fast as humanly possible." Now another time, my cousin came over to spend the night at my house, and we wanted to play PS4, but the other controller was over in the church. So we walked across the yard into the church, and it was pitch black out. When we opened the door of the church, we might have made it 2 to 3 feet in before we heard the loudest blood-curdling scream I've ever heard from the bank of the new sanctuary. We ran out that door and back into my house so fast. Number 9. Janitor story. This person said, "I worked as a janitor at a church for 7 or 8 years. The church was originally built in the early 1900s and had existing original buildings to it on top of new ones. I am Christian, so I believe in demonic entities. There were specific buildings that just gave me the heebie-jeebies to be in alone. I fully believe there's a lot of spiritual warfare we cannot see going on in and around churches. I would turn every single light on and unlock every door on the specific floor I would be cleaning, just so I would know they were all open in case any of them shut, because my coworkers and I always got creepy vibes from that building and would hear footsteps running sometimes. We also heard accounts of pastoral staff being in there while all the doors and cabinets repeatedly opened and slammed shut. I knew which buildings had been used previously for exorcisms, and the things that went on during the exorcism will never leave my mind. One time, I was shampooing chairs in that particular room, and the entire stack of chairs in front of me started to rattle and shake. This happened to me 2 to 3 times while working there, and no, it wasn't the machine or my fault with stacking the chairs properly that caused it. I'd spoken to a leader in the church about my experiences, and basically he said, yeah, it happens. Number 8. The sleepover. This user said, "Years ago for a church event I was forced into going to, we all had a terrifying experience. The setup was boys slept anywhere they wanted to downstairs, and girls were free to sleep wherever upstairs. Except some of the rooms were locked off because the church was being renovated. Night rolls around and us girls migrate to the nursery, and most of the guys just crash in the small indoor gym basketball court. Only one guy couldn't sleep. Above the basketball court are windows to another room that was locked off, and one of the guys kept seeing flashing lights and the silhouettes of people looking down on him. He didn't stay in the gym very long. Now around the same time, myself and the other girls were in the nursery. The door was locked, and next to it was a one-way window. Inside was like a mirror. Well, I started hearing banging and scratching on the door. I freaked and looked up to see 2 grinning faces staring back at all of us. Now remember, we're on the mirror side. So one of us bolted towards the door, and we heard stomping down the hall, but no one was there." Number 7. Haunted office. This worker said, "The church campus consists of the sanctuary, the office, an empty, decrepit house where the priest used to live that was later used as a meeting space until it was condemned, and a cemetery with the oldest graves being those of War of 1812 soldiers. Now, a priest died in the house in the late 1800s, and he still haunts the place. When I first started working there, I was in the office with a member of the congregation who told me that on several occasions when they left the old house and turned off all the lights, they would turn around and see the lights had switched back on inside through the windows. When I left the office that day by myself, I turned off the lights. At the last light switch, I felt almost an electric buzz through my finger. I went back to my desk to grab my things and lock the door, and the light switch I had turned off was on. I've seen flashes of light in a dark windowless room and I saw a man cross in front of my headlights and disappear. He had dark hair and was wearing a white shirt. I once unlocked the deadbolt on the door to the church, and when I went to turn the knob to go inside, something turned it in the opposite way in my handle. I've seen motion detector lights outside turn on by themselves, and when I've jumped in front of them waving my hands, they never come on. My boss also told me that members have said they've seen the priest looking out the windows of the house. Number 6. Diary entry. The following excerpt is from the journal of Wilford Woodruff. The events of the passage took place in October of 1840 in London, England. Having retired to rest in good season, I fell asleep and slept until midnight, when I awoke and meditated upon the things of God until 3 o'clock in the morning, and while forming a determination to warn people in London, and by the assistance and inspiration of God to overcome the power of darkness, a person appeared to me whom I consider was the Prince of Darkness. He made war upon me and attempted to take my life. He caught me by the throat and choked me nearly to death. He wounded me in my forehead. I also wounded him a number of places in the head. As he was about to overcome me, I prayed to the Father in the name of Jesus Christ for help. I then had power over him and he left me, though I was much wounded. Afterwards, 3 persons dressed in white came to me and prayed with me, and I was healed immediately of all my wounds and delivered of all my troubles. Number 5. Daycare haunting. This person said, I work at a sizable Baptist church. We have a very large daycare, and on the ground it was built on used to be a chapel. The stories of sighting something only comes from that side of the building. The storytellers are usually the girls who run the daycare and the cleaning ladies. I personally haven't seen anything weird, but today 3 of the daycare girls talked to me about a young girl who saw something. She was alone in a bathroom connected to a classroom, and the caretaker heard her talking. She came out and the caretaker asked who they were talking to. They said, I was talking to a ghost. Her name is Gigi. And for a few hours after that, the girls were noticing things being moved around and plastic trash bags being shaken. Number 4. Saw ghost in window. This user said, last night my family and I, who ghost hunts frequently, took some other family members that have never ghost hunted out. We went to the Joppa Church in Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. We usually catch some potential evidence via photographs, and we sometimes get hits on the EMF reader. Last night while outside, we saw a face that kept distorting and had its own light source. And it was moving as if it was trying to manifest itself, but couldn't quite get there, as we never saw the full face. All light sources on the inside and outside were off, except we had one red headlamp on that. The creepiest part is, while we were in the middle of seeing this, we had all the lights shut off, and my sister started videotaping. And you can hear us in the video, describe what we're seeing, and it did not capture anything. It's driving me nuts, and I can't get it out of my mind. 3 of us have been ghost hunting for approximately 15 years, and never in those years have I seen anything like this. Number 3. Nun Ghost in church. This online user posted, I was 16 years old and went on a trip with the church choir, and we stayed in an old monastery church. I had health problems, and in the middle of the night I urgently needed our guide, as we called her aunt, and as she slept in a room in another hallway, I had to go down the stairs to another hallway. Suddenly a nun appeared on the stairs and asked me what I was doing here and that I should sleep. I said I needed an aunt because I was not feeling well, and she took me to that room, and all that time she was saying to herself, I have to hurry, I have to be fast. The next morning the priest asked me how I got to my aunt when the doors of those stairs were locked for 50 years because they were in ruins, and he said there was no nun and that the last nun were there almost 100 years ago. I don't know what it was, and to this day I cringe when I think about it. 2. Mysterious crying. This user said back in around 2001, I was in Dublin, Ireland on a trip. One morning shortly after breakfast, we decided to go to Christ Church Cathedral. We do a tour of the church and just generally walk around. I had a camcorder, and I also used to love my 35mm SLR camera. We are touring the church, and I'm mostly using the camcorder inside the church, but I do take some overall shots inside. Something in the footwalk made me feel really uncomfortable, and my ex was also feeling sick after a while and she said, let's leave this place. We go on with the rest of our tour in Dublin, then go home. We get home and a few days after we arrive, some friends come over and I start to play my camcorder recording shots of Dublin. When the part inside the Christ Church comes up, one of our friends asks, who's that crying? I didn't hear it and we rewound the tape and put the volume up loud and we could hear someone crying, like a moaning type crying. The thing is following us around for most of the video, and the next day we took my 35mm film to get developed, and in 4 photos you can see a smoke swirl, like one coming off a wall and another hanging overhead. Then in the photos of the footpath there are flames on the corner of the wall. And coming in at number 1 is The Job. This user said, several years ago I had an opportunity to help restore a 100-year-old church. During the days I would work, I'd always see movement in my peripheral vision, but nothing that was there when I'd look in that direction. Well, after business hours one evening, I got a call from a tenant saying that something was making noise in the basement of the church. As soon as I got to the basement door, I could hear what sounded like a power tool running. I find the cause of the noise, which was an air compressor that was unplugged. At this moment, my brand new flashlight started to flicker and another unplugged power tool took turns behind me. I ran out of the basement and got out and saw the tenant standing at the door. I tell her what happened and she smirks and says that doesn't surprise her. She then tells me a story of a woman who held the last wedding in the church before it closed down. She was stood up on her wedding day and ended her life because of it. Now, after that night in the basement, the paranormal activity happened more and more often. It got to a point where a coworker fell off a ladder. When I asked what happened, he said he felt like he was pushed while leaning to paint. There were even times where the movement I had always seen in there started to take shape. Instead of a blur, I started seeing a person standing there, but nothing when I looked in that direction. One night, as I'm locking the doors, I hear faint footsteps in the balcony, and I yell out, is anyone still in here? I didn't get an answer, but at this point, I'm ready to go. As I reach for the door, I hear footsteps behind me and a muffled voice say, leave. As I'm locking the door, I see movement inside the church. I look up and see a ghostly or shadow-like figure standing where the altar once was. After that night, I made sure that I never entered that building after dark again. Needless to say, I quit shortly thereafter, and yeah, I don't blame him. Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 disturbing things people have seen in haunted churches. Which one scares you the most? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm your host, Emily, and we'll see you next time. Peace.